Welcome to Shine, Governance Illuminated, a Private Directors Association podcast. Abhi Shah was born in Georgia, raised in India, educated in Texas, and sold books door-to-door in Alabama at the start of his working life. Later, his corporate career took him up and down America's East Coast and all over the world. Abhi shares his thoughts on board service for private equity-backed companies and educating children, 2 of his own, and 1 million and counting in India. Shine, Governance Illuminated, only from the PDA.
My grandfather was a shopkeeper in India, and I lived in a home with rent of less than $1 a month. I grew up in that home with 10 family members, all under one roof. I came to study in America alone at the age of 16, and after wrapping up senior year of high school in Fort Worth, Texas, I sold books door to door, 80 hours a week in 100 degrees heat in Talladega, a small town of 16,000 people in Alabama. So I did this every summer to pay my way through college, and that was really my first job. And I sure learned the value of hard work early on in life. You know, no matter how tough a challenge is, no matter how seemingly impossible it is, you can do whatever you set your mind to. But after that, I worked with several Fortune 50 corporations in technology, telecom, and pharmaceutical industries. So I started with Compaq at their headquarters in Houston, Texas. I worked on marketing for Compaq's data storage systems that had $1 billion plus in sales back in 1999. And as you may recall, Compaq was then acquired by HP. So then I worked with Andersen Consulting in Washington, D.C., which became Accenture during the course of my time there. I worked on several complex, high-stakes business initiatives. And just to give you a flavor, I led digital transformation at Verizon and pioneered a new product suite that enabled the company to enter the long-distance market in the face of a perfect storm at the time. Government action, competitor lawsuits, union agitation, post the President Clinton era telecom deregulation. Then I worked at Comcast in Philadelphia. I managed the rollout of Comcast's voice over IP offering, which was the cutting edge new technology at the time. And I must say it was as much a technological challenge as a leadership one, as I had to drive the efforts of vice presidents and directors across 12 divisions that didn't necessarily see eye to eye on things. And finally, I also worked at AstraZeneca at their US headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware. I helped them analyze their marketing strategy for a newly launched cholesterol drug to improve market share.
So you really took your early experience of going door to door and expanded it from going company to company to be able to succeed.
That's right.
So with your very eclectic company background and the many unique opportunities you had to really build and grow new technologies, new divisions, new perspectives, how did you decide to sort of leap off the corporate track and found what I believe is your first company, the Clutch Group?
I always had the entrepreneurial bug in me. And so I think after all of those adventures in the Fortune 100 large corporation world, it sort of felt like the right time. And so I actually worked with a smaller couple $100 million tech company prior to launching Clutch. And just for background, Clutch Group was a global artificial intelligence powered data analytics and professional services company that I founded in 2006 and served as CEO for over a decade until its merger in 2017. So our operations, Elaine, spread across the US, Europe, and Asia. So we basically leveraged AI and big data analytics to help these large corporations undergo digital transformation and solve complex legal risk and compliance problems. So we had developed a solution offering that was capable of harnessing insights from extremely large volumes of unstructured data with great speed and accuracy at half the prior costs.
From what I understand, Abhi, and I'm intrigued by this, when you started the company, you really prioritized governance first. I understand that your company dealt with analytics and risk and compliance, but many companies start as the shoemaker's children. They talk about what other companies should do, but they don't do that for themselves. At Clutch Group, how did you see the value that having strong governance from the very beginning add to your company? What impact did it have?
We established a world-class board of advisors and a board of directors at Clutch comprised of senior executives and respected academics from organizations such as Accenture, Citigroup, Harvard, and McKinsey, to name a few. And to bring it to life for you as to the value that came, success didn't come easy. We had a rocky start. Our first client at a Fortune 20 corporation died before signing the contract. Our first acquisition fell through at the 11th hour, right before closing. And then the global financial crisis hit in 2007. So as Rocky says, it's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, how much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning's done. And so we did not give up. We stuck with it. And many of our board members were freshly retired CEOs who brought not just credibility and a full Rolodex, but also tremendous experience in crisis management. And so when the world plunged into this global financial crisis, it was the depth of our boards whose combined experience and expertise helped us navigate those stormy waters and make the right decisions at crucial moments. So in the end, after the dust settled from the global financial crisis, revenues tripled and profitability increased sixfold in a 3-year period. Clutch was recognized as one of Inc. 5000's fastest growing companies in America for multiple years in a row. Our case study was taught at Harvard Business School, and I was named Entrepreneur of the Year by Ernst & Young. But I give a great deal of credit to the group of advisors and members of the board that we had assembled in really helping us navigate through the roller coaster ride that any company is.
And for a young company and a young person who's starting a company, you showed great wisdom. I've been sitting on boards for over 20 years, and I think too often young companies underestimate the value that outside perspective can bring, particularly during turbulent times. The sense is we have to hunker down and focus in as opposed to expand our perspectives as much as possible and build from the experiences of people who have been there. People think they need to invent it themselves rather than listen to seasoned advice and counsel. So kudos to you. And so you've totally given up the CEO thing for governance work going forward.
I measure my success by the number of people I help, and board work enables me to help many more companies. At any given point in time, Elaine, I could be advising a company on its digital transformation, while guiding another company on its global expansion, while serving as a sounding board for a CEO, having been in their shoes, or bringing a different perspective to the table with my diverse background. So I am able to bring to bear my decade and a half of corporate governance experience and a strategic and disruptive mindset, which makes board work as much more fun. I look at my ability to add value and have a meaningful impact. And that can happen in one or more of 4 different ways. So first is, as an experienced CEO who built a global company, serving as a sounding board for the current CEO who's living through it. Another way often is my digital transformation expertise, right from my days at Accenture through Clutch and my board work. I think now, particularly in the aftermath of COVID, it feels like the world has leapfrogged 5 to 7 years of digital adoption just in the past 12 to 18 months. And virtually every business's core strategy depends on digital transformation as a critical component. And so I think that expertise is a second way. Third would be just having worked all over the globe, across the US, Europe, and Asia Pacific, with companies looking at international expansion. And finally, just a decade and a half of corporate governance experience as a diverse Asian American board director. So generally, I will look at these 4 things to see if I can add meaningful value by bringing to bear one or more of these aspects, in addition to just the governance and oversight, right, which is the 101 of the job.
I know that some of the boards you sit on are private equity-backed companies. I've also sat on private equity boards, and it can be a real contact sport. What do you enjoy about the work? And as you think about the work you're doing in helping PDA with private equity education, what should both current independent PE board members and aspiring board members know? What do you see as the best lessons of experience to share?
So look, the good old days of private equity, when making money seemed easier, are long gone. Markets are much more competitive and efficient now, so flawless and timely execution across virtually every aspect of the business is critical today to creating value. And PE firms need more operating expertise and insight around industry dynamics to gain that edge, especially when they need to accomplish more in a fixed holding period, which typically is around 5 years for them, right? To deliver the same kind of historic returns. So I think that's where we come in as independent directors. Depending on the size and stage of the company within the private equity portfolio, you may even be called upon to provide access to your network, whether it is for new clients or acquisition targets that may be essential to the company's success. Generally, what I've found is the process of crafting the private equity-backed board over time has become highly sophisticated and customized, where they generally cover the financial skill sets and acumen. The private equity sort of brings that to the board. But where there are specific areas that are critical to the investment thesis in terms of creating value over the next 3-5 years in the business plan. It could be a digital transformation. It could be a global expansion. It could be driving a specific large operational improvement. It could be a new product innovation. So what you find is people that bring a specific expertise in these areas are going to be well positioned for that portfolio company board to be picked or invited by the private equity members. That's what I've typically seen. And then, of course, they value, the overall governance and oversight experience that you might bring. And secondly, and increasingly more importantly, from an ESG perspective and diversity perspective, the background that you bring.
The other part of your life that we haven't talked about is really the extensive work you're doing on creating high-impact philanthropic organizations.
I sort of divide my life portfolio really in 3 buckets. And let me first start with the one that you talked about. So I chair our not-for-profit called Yuva Unstoppable. YUVA, Yuva Unstoppable, which has transformed 2,000 impoverished municipal schools, impacting the lives of over 1 million underprivileged children.
Are you a founder?
My brother and I like to joke that he's on the ground running the day-to-day operations. As chair, I get to claim credit for all the wonderful work that him and the team do. So we actually have a presence across 40 cities in India, and we have been doing this work for a decade and a half.
So you're the backseat driver.
Yes. I get to throw my weight around at board meetings. On the second aspect, which is the corporate board work. So I've been serving on the boards of BlackRock-backed digital transformation provider, a Sequoia Capital-backed artificial intelligence software as a service company, and thirdly, the largest global provider of financial crime solutions called AML RightSource. So my plate was pretty full until recently I rolled off from the first 2 boards post-transactions that we have. And now I have some more bandwidth to take on additional corporate boards. But that typically would take up about 50% of the life portfolio allocation. And then finally, the remaining time is for immersive life experiences with family. I jokingly say that my wife and kids love me more, since I no longer live 70, 80 hours on a plane between 3 continents, which used to be my life for more than 2 decades.
Sometimes families love you more when you're spending your 70 hours on 3 continents, but you're very fortunate that they actually like having you around. So how many children do you have, if I can ask?
2 boys. The elder one is 7, second grader, and the younger one is 4 in pre-K. For several generations, we've not had girls, so I need to crack the code somehow.
And it's men who determine the gender of their child. So there you go. Cracking the code will be important. And what legacy, what are you going to teach them?
I feel our biggest contribution as parents to them will be the values that we instill in them to become a good human being and be the best version of themselves. Financially, they'll certainly be off our payroll at 17 when they graduate high school.
So they're going to start selling books door to door.
There you go. So they can go through that school of hard knocks, that was immensely valuable in shaping my life. And as I reflect on my life, I'm convinced that it has not been fair to me. I have been blessed with a loving family, caring friends, great education, and tremendous opportunities in my career. And it's truly been a dream life. And for that, I'm deeply grateful, but it's certainly much more than I or any one person deserves. And so as I look to the future, I hope to devote more of my life and spirit for others that may be more deserving, but may not have been as fortunate as me.
It'll be interesting in 10 years to track back and see if they really are off the payroll.
Yes, we must do a reunion show.
Absolutely.
That was Abhi Shah in conversation with Elaine Eisenman. To learn more about education and member benefits from PDA, go to privatedirectorsassociation.org. Join us next time for Shine, Governance Illuminated, your podcast from the Private Directors Association.